The desperate signal the crystal chambers of the Zephyrian High Council had never seen such chaos. Ambassador Kethera pressed her delicate blue hands against the emergency console, her normally calm demeanor shattered by the incoming transmission. Around the circular chamber, representatives from a dozen different worlds spoke in hushed, worried tones as holographic displays showed the devastating images from the outer spiral. "Play it again," demanded Counselor Thranks, his massive form hunched over the central viewing platform. The reptilian leader's scales had turned a deep purple, a clear sign of distress among his people. "I need to understand what we're facing." The hologram flickered to life, showing the final moments of Kepler Station. The massive defensive platform, built to protect 3 inhabited worlds, was being torn apart by something that defied explanation. Swarms of geometric shapes moved through space like living metal, each no larger than a fighter craft, but working together with perfect coordination. They flowed around the station's powerful shields as if they weren't there, then began systematically dismantling the structure piece by piece. "The attack began 14 hours ago," Kethera reported, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "Kepler Station sent this message just before they lost communications." She activated another recording, and the desperate voice of Commander Voss filled the chamber. "This is Kepler Station to any Zephyrian Council forces. We are under attack by unknown mechanical entities. Our weapons have no effect. They seem to be learning from every shot we fire. The outer defense grid has fallen, and they're heading for the civilian areas. We estimate 3 million inhabitants in immediate danger. They're not just destroying everything, they're taking it apart and rebuilding it into more of themselves. If anyone receives this transmission, warn the core worlds. These things are headed toward the heart of Council space." The transmission ended with the sound of screaming metal and then silence. The council chamber remained quiet for a long moment as the reality of the situation sank in. 3 million lives lost in a matter of hours, and the enemy was still advancing toward more populated systems. "What forces do we have available?" asked Counselor Mirren, her ethereal form shimmering with anxiety. The energy-based being's usual bright glow had dimmed considerably. General Vexon stepped forward, his 4 arms moving in complex gestures as he accessed the military database. The tall, gray-skinned commander had served the Council for over 40 years, but he had never faced anything like this. "The Third Fleet is 3 weeks away, positioned near the Andorian border. The Fifth Fleet is conducting peacekeeping operations in the Beta Sector. Even at maximum speed, we cannot get significant forces to the outer spiral for at least 10 days. 10 days, Franks repeated grimly. At the rate these machines are advancing, they'll have consumed half a dozen worlds by then." The chamber erupted in desperate discussions as representatives tried to find solutions. Some suggested evacuating the threatened worlds, but there simply weren't enough transport ships available. Others proposed requesting help from neutral species, but most advanced civilizations were already council members or had their own problems to deal with. Kethera had remained silent during the debate, but now she stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "There is one possibility," she said quietly. "The humans." The chamber fell silent again, but this time the quiet was filled with skepticism rather than fear. The humans were the newest species to make contact with the Council, having been discovered only 8 months ago during a routine survey mission. Their world, Earth, had been classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most dangerous planetary environments the Council had ever encountered. "The primitives?" General Vexon asked with obvious disdain. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They still use chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. What could they possibly do that our advanced fleets cannot?" "Their world classification," Kethera replied firmly. "Class 12 death world, inhabitants don't think like the rest of us. Our survey team reported that humans have developed military strategies unlike anything in our databases. They call it chaos warfare. Tactics that seem random and inefficient, but somehow work." Counselor Mirren flickered with interest. "Elaborate on this chaos warfare." "According to the survey reports, Humans prepare for battles by assuming everything will go wrong, Cathera explained. They build redundancy into every system, carry 3 times more ammunition than they think they'll need, and train for scenarios that seem impossible. Their military doctrine is based on the assumption that any plan will fail, so they prepare multiple backup plans for every backup plan. Franks's scales shifted to a thoughtful green color. That does sound like death world thinking. But their primitive technology, maybe primitive technology is what we need, Cathera interrupted. These mechanical entities adapted to our energy weapons within hours. They learned to counter our shields and defensive systems, but humans still use projectile weapons that work by simply throwing metal very fast. You can't adapt to a chunk of steel traveling at hypersonic speeds. The debate continued for another hour, but eventually, desperation won over skepticism. The council had no other options available in the time frame they needed. A emergency transmission was prepared and sent toward Earth's solar system, hoping the humans would respond to a call for help from species they barely knew. Meanwhile, on the dark side of Earth's moon, Luna Base hummed with activity. The facility had been humanity's first major step into deep space, serving as both a military outpost and a research station. Commander Sarah Chun stood in the main communications center, reviewing routine reports from Earth when the priority alert sounded. Chun was a career military officer who had served in conflicts across Earth before being selected for the Luna assignment. Her black hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, and her dark eyes showed the sharp intelligence that had earned her rapid promotion through the ranks. At 35, she was young for such an important command, but her record spoke for itself. Commander called Lieutenant Torres from his station. We're receiving an emergency transmission from the Zephyrian Council. It's marked with their highest priority codes. Chin raised an eyebrow. In the 8 months since first contact, the Council had been polite but distant. They treated humans like interesting primitives who might someday become useful junior partners. An emergency transmission was completely unexpected. Route it to my office, Chin ordered, and get me the senior staff immediately. Within minutes, Chin was listening to Ambassador Kethera's translated message. The alien's words painted a picture of an enemy that seemed almost unstoppable, consuming entire worlds and growing stronger with each victory. The Council's mighty fleets were too far away to help in time, and they were asking Earth, the newest and least advanced member, to respond to their desperate call for assistance. Chin played the message twice, taking notes on the enemy's capabilities. Adaptive technology that learned from each encounter was concerning, but not unprecedented. Earth's military had dealt with evolving threats before, though usually biological rather than mechanical. The key was to present the enemy with so many different problems that it couldn't adapt to all of them at once. She activated her communication system and called her senior staff. Chief Engineer Marcus Rivera arrived first, a stocky man with graying hair and steady hands who could fix anything that flew through space. He was followed by Dr. Elena Vasquez, the base's chief science officer, a brilliant woman who had earned her doctorate in xenobiology before the first alien contact. Finally, Tactical Officer Jake Morrison entered, a tall man with red hair and green eyes who had earned his position through excellence in combat analysis. You've all heard the Council's message. Chin began without preamble. Assessment. Dr. Vasquez spoke first. Based on the data they've provided, we're looking at a form of mechanical life that can rapidly adapt to new threats. The fact that it's taking apart existing technology to build more of itself suggests some form of nanotechnology or advanced manufacturing capability. Rivera leaned forward in his chair. Their adaptive shielding is interesting, but it has to have limits. Every system has weak points, and adaptation takes time and energy. If we can overwhelm their systems faster than they can adapt, we might have a chance. Morrison pulled up tactical displays on his tablet. The Council's problem is they're fighting like civilized beings. Clean energy weapons, precise targeting, minimal collateral damage. Against an adaptive enemy, that's a losing strategy. We need to introduce chaos into the equation. Chin nodded approvingly. Her staff was thinking along the right lines. What's our fleet status? The experimental defense group is fully operational, Rivera reported. 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers, and 2 carriers with full fighter complements, plus support vessels. It's not much compared to Council fleet, but our ships pack more firepower per ton than anything they have, and they're built for Earth conditions, Morrison added. Multiple redundant systems, heavy armor, weapons that don't rely on exotic energy signatures. If these machines are adapting to Council technology, they might not know what to do with good old-fashioned kinetic weapons. Chin stood and walked to the window, overlooking the lunar surface. Earth hung in the star-filled sky, blue and white and beautiful. Somewhere out there, an unknown enemy was destroying entire civilizations. The Council was asking humans to help despite considering them primitives. This was humanity's chance to prove they belonged among the stars. Prep the fleet for immediate departure, Chin ordered. Full warload. We're going to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when someone threatens innocent lives. The space around Luna Base came alive with activity as human ships prepared for their first major military action beyond Earth's solar system. None of them knew what they would face in the deep dark between the stars, but they were ready to find out. The call for help had been answered, and Earth was going to war. The Death World Difference, the Kepler Defense Station, hung in space like a wounded giant, its once gleaming hull scarred by strange geometric patterns where the mechanical swarms had carved away sections of armor plating. Emergency lights flickered across its surface as repair crews worked frantically to restore basic systems. Commander Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of her flagship, the U.S. Thunderstorm, studying the damage through the viewport with grim determination. First time seeing Harvester work up close, said Admiral Vexon as he materialized beside her via holographic projection. The Zephyrian officer's forearms moved in what Chun had learned was a gesture of deep concern among his people. Your fleet made good time getting here, Commander. Chin nodded respectfully, though she could hear the skepticism in the alien admiral's voice. The human fleet had arrived at the Kepler system 12 hours ago, their boxy, angular ships looking primitive next to the elegant curves of Council vessels. The Zephyrian ships resembled works of art with their flowing lines and crystalline energy signatures, while the human ships looked like flying weapons platforms covered in armor plating and sensor arrays. Thank you for the coordinates, Admiral, Chin replied. What's our tactical situation? Vexhan's hologram flickered as he accessed his ship's database. The mechanical entities which our scientists have designated as harvesters attacked in 3 waves over the past 18 hours. They appear to be scouting our defenses and adapting their approach with each encounter. Our energy weapons proved effective initially, but subsequent waves showed complete immunity to the same frequencies. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her portable analysis station where she had been studying sensor readings from the attacks. That's consistent with advanced adaptive shielding, she said, but adaptation requires processing time and energy. If we can present them with too many variables to process simultaneously, we might overwhelm their systems. With respect, Dr. Vexhan said with barely concealed condescension, these entities defeated our most advanced defensive systems. Your primitive kinetic weapons are unlikely to fare better. Chief Engineer Marcus Rivera, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, stepped forward with a slight grin. Admiral, with all due respect, there's nothing primitive about throwing a chunk of depleted uranium at something at 3% of light speed. Physics doesn't adapt. Before Vexhan could respond, the proximity alarms began sounding throughout both fleets. Tactical Officer Jake Morrison looked up from his displays with a tense expression. Contacts incoming, bearing 27 Mark 8. Looks like another Harvester scouting group. The main display showed dozens of geometric shapes emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Each Harvester drone was roughly the size of a fighter craft, but they moved with perfect coordination that suggested a shared intelligence. Their surfaces shifted and flowed like liquid metal, constantly reconfiguring themselves as they approached the combined fleet. Council ships prepare to engage, Admiral Vexon commanded. The Zephyrian vessels moved into their standard defensive formation, an elegant pattern that maximized their overlapping energy shields while providing clear firing lanes for their plasma cannons. Chen watched the Council ships with professional interest. Their tactics were textbook perfect, exactly what she would expect from a military force that had achieved peace through superior technology and precise application of force. Unfortunately, they were facing an enemy that learned from textbook tactics. Human fleet, hold position, Chen ordered. Let's see how they adapt to Council weapons first. The Harvester drones swept toward the Zephyrian formation like a swarm of angry insects. The Council ships opened fire with coordinated precision, their plasma beams creating brilliant lines of energy across the darkness of space. The first wave of drones died instantly, their adaptive shielding unable to handle the concentrated firepower, but the second wave was different. The Harvester drones had shifted their surface configurations, developing what appeared to be energy diffusion grids that scattered the plasma beams harmlessly into space. They flowed around the Council ships like water, seemingly immune to the weapons that had destroyed their predecessors moments before. Impossible, Vexon muttered. They adapted to our plasma frequencies in less than 30 seconds. Not impossible, Morrison said as he studied the tactical data streaming across his displays. Just really good engineering. But look at their formation pattern. They're prioritizing adaptation over efficiency. That creates opportunities. Chen nodded, understanding immediately what her tactical officer was suggesting. All ships, prepare for engagement. Alpha pattern, maximum chaos protocols. The human fleet broke formation and scattered across the battlefield in what appeared to be complete disorder. Unlike the precise movements of the Council ships, the human vessels moved erratically, constantly changing speed and direction in patterns that seemed random. The Harvester drones paused for a moment, their shared intelligence apparently confused by the chaotic human approach. That moment of confusion was all Chen needed. All ships open fire. Full spread, mixed munitions. The human ships erupted with weapons fire, but instead of the elegant energy beams used by the Council forces, they unleashed a devastating barrage of kinetic projectiles. Rail guns fired depleted uranium slugs at incredible velocities, while missile pods launched swarms of smart munitions with different guidance systems and warheads. The space between the fleets filled with metal fragments, explosive charges, and electromagnetic pulse generators. The Harvester drones tried to adapt to the incoming fire, but found themselves facing an impossible problem. Each human ship was using different weapons with different characteristics. Some fired solid projectiles that couldn't be deflected by energy shields. Others used explosive rounds that created unpredictable shrapnel patterns. Still, others employed electromagnetic warfare that disrupted the drones' coordination networks. They can't adapt to everything at once, Dr. Vasquez observed with scientific fascination as she watched the Harvester formation begin to break apart. Each adaptation requires computational resources and energy. If you present them with too many different problems simultaneously, they have to choose which threats to prioritize. Chief Engineer Rivera was monitoring the human ship's performance with obvious pride. Redundant systems for the win, he said. When one weapon stops working, we have 5 more that work differently. When one guidance system gets jammed, we switch to manual targeting. When shields fail, we rely on armor. When armor fails, we use damage control protocols. The battle became a chaotic melee as human ships dove through the Harvester formation, their weapons blazing. Unlike the Council ships, which maintained careful formation and precise firing solutions, the human vessels seemed to embrace chaos. They executed impossible maneuvers fired from unexpected angles and used tactics that violated everything the Harvesters had learned about civilized warfare. Captain Maria Santos, commanding the destroyer UES Hurricane, demonstrated the human approach perfectly. Her ship rolled through a complex spiral pattern while firing kinetic rounds from every available weapon port. When Harvester drones tried to surround her, she detonated a proximity mine that sent metal fragments in all directions, then used the resulting debris cloud as cover for a close-range missile attack. Human tactical doctrine is fascinating, Admiral Vexon admitted as he watched the battle unfold. Your ships appear to be operating without any coordination, yet they're achieving remarkable results. That's the beauty of chaos warfare, Chin explained. Every human ship captain is trained to think independently and adapt to changing situations. We don't rely on perfect coordination because we know perfect plans always fail when they meet the enemy. Instead, we prepare each ship to fight alone if necessary and trust our people to make good decisions under pressure. The harvester drones were clearly struggling to cope with the human approach. Their adaptive systems had been designed to counter organized, predictable military tactics, not the seemingly random violence that humans brought to the battlefield. Some drones tried to adapt to kinetic weapons by developing thicker armor, only to be destroyed by electromagnetic pulse weapons. Others attempted to counter the EMP attacks by hardening their electronics, making them vulnerable to simple explosive charges. Sergeant First Class Tony Mitchell, operating a point defense turret on the cruiser USS Avalanche, exemplified the human advantage. When his primary targeting system was disrupted by harvester interference, he switched to manual control. When his ammunition ran low, he improvised by firing maintenance tools from the ship's workshop through the railgun system. When a harvester drone attached itself to his turret, he used the ship's docking clamps to grab it and then fired all weapons at point-blank range. The harvesters are retreating, Morrison reported with satisfaction. Remaining drones are breaking off and heading for the hyperspace jump point. Chun watched the surviving mechanical entities flee the battlefield, their perfect formations reduced to scattered individuals desperately trying to escape. It was humanity's first victory against the adaptive machines, but she knew it was only the beginning. Admiral Vexon, she said, turning to address the holographic projection. What's the status of your fleet? The Zephyrian officer's expression showed a mixture of amazement and respect that hadn't been there before. Minimal damage, thanks to your intervention. Commander Chen, I owe you an apology. Your tactics may appear chaotic, but they are clearly effective against this enemy. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her analysis station with a worried expression. Commander, I'm detecting something concerning in the sensor data. The harvesters weren't just fighting us. They were studying us. Every weapon we used, every tactic we employed, every ship movement we made was being recorded and analyzed. Meaning? Chin asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Meaning next time they'll be ready for us, Vasquez replied grimly. These entities learn from every encounter. Our chaos warfare gave us an advantage this time, but they'll adapt. We need to stay ahead of their learning curve, or we'll find ourselves facing enemies that know exactly how to counter every move we make. Chin nodded thoughtfully as she studied the tactical displays showing the aftermath of the battle. The human approach had worked against an enemy that had defeated the best the Council could offer, but victory brought new challenges. They were dealing with an intelligence that never forgot and always adapted. The next encounter would test whether human creativity could stay ahead of mechanical evolution. All ships begin damage assessment and resupply operations, Chin ordered, and start working on new tactical approaches. Something tells me we're going to need them soon. Learning the enemy DR. Elena Vasquez carefully manipulated the containment field around the harvester fragment, her dark eyes reflecting the strange metallic surface that seemed to shift and flow even in death. The piece of alien technology was no larger than her fist, but it represented the first intact sample of harvester material anyone had managed to capture. Around her, the science laboratory aboard the UES Thunderstorm hummed with activity as her team worked to unlock the secrets of their adaptive enemy. Fascinating, she murmured, adjusting the quantum microscope to peer deeper into the fragment structure. Miguel, are you seeing this? Dr. Miguel Santos, her research partner and younger brother of Captain Maria Santos, looked up from his workstation where he was analyzing the fragment's energy signatures. His usually cheerful demeanor had been replaced by intense concentration as he studied readings that defied conventional understanding. The molecular structure is unlike anything in our databases, Miguel replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. It's not purely mechanical, Elena. There are organic components integrated at the quantum level. This thing is part machine, part biological organism. Commander Sarah Chun entered the laboratory with Admiral Vexhan's holographic projection beside her. The Zephyrian officer had been spending more time consulting with the human fleet since witnessing their victory against the Harvesters, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine curiosity about human methods. Report, Doctor, Chin requested, studying the alien fragment with professional interest. Vasquez activated the main display, showing a three-dimensional model of the Harvester's internal structure. What we're looking at is a fusion of organic neural networks and mechanical manufacturing systems. The biological components provide the learning capability and adaptation algorithms, while the mechanical parts handle construction and combat functions. That explains their rapid adaptation, Admiral Vexhan observed, his four arms moving in complex patterns as he processed the information. Biological neural networks can form new connections and pathways almost instantaneously when properly stimulated. Miguel highlighted different sections of the model with his laser pointer. But here's the really disturbing part. The organic components aren't native to this technology. They're harvested from conquered species and integrated into the mechanical matrix. Every world these things consume adds new biological patterns to their collective intelligence. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. The Harvesters weren't just destroying civilizations, they were absorbing them, incorporating the knowledge and capabilities of each conquered species into their own ever-growing intelligence. How many worlds have they consumed? Chin asked quietly. Based on the complexity of the neural pathways we're seeing, Vasquez replied, hundreds, maybe thousands. This fragment contains genetic material from species we've never encountered, some of which might have been extinct for millennia. Before anyone could respond to this sobering revelation, Tactical Officer Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Commander Chen to the bridge, immediately. We have a situation developing. Chun and Vexhan hurried to the bridge, where Morrison was staring at the tactical displays with obvious concern. The screens showed a massive formation of Harvester ships approaching the system, but these weren't the small drone units they had fought before. These were larger vessels, some nearly the size of Council battleships, moving in formations that seemed disturbingly familiar. They're using Council tactical doctrine, Morrison reported grimly. Perfect geometric formations, coordinated fire patterns, overlapping shield coverage. It's like they studied our last battle and learned from both sides. Chun felt a chill as she realized what they were facing. The Harvesters had adapted not just to human weapons, but to human tactics as well. They were coming back with strategies that combined the best of both human chaos warfare and Council precision. Fleet status, she asked. All ships operational, but we've expended 60% of our kinetic ammunition in the last engagement, Chief Engineer Rivera reported from his station. We can fabricate more, but it takes time we might not have. The Harvester fleet entered weapons range and immediately demonstrated how much they had learned. Instead of charging directly at the combined Human Council formation, they split into multiple groups that attacked from different vectors simultaneously. Some units used coordinated energy weapons like Council ships, while others employed chaotic swarm tactics that mimicked human approaches. They're trying to overwhelm our adaptation capabilities, Morrison observed. Same strategy we used against them, but in reverse. Admiral Vexhan's hologram flickered with what Chun had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of admiration mixed with fear. These entities are learning at an exponential rate. Each encounter teaches them new approaches to warfare. The battle began with devastating intensity. Council ships found their traditional tactics countered by harvesters that anticipated every standard maneuver, while human vessels faced enemies that seemed to predict their chaotic movements and respond with appropriate countermeasures. The space around Kepler Station became a nightmare of explosions and debris as both fleets struggled against an enemy that knew them too well. Captain Lisa Park, commanding the destroyer UES Tempest, demonstrated human adaptability under pressure when her ship was surrounded by harvester units using modified council tactics. Instead of following standard doctrine, she ordered her crew to shut down all electronic systems and fight purely on manual controls. The harvesters, expecting to counter sophisticated targeting systems, found themselves facing weapons operated by human instinct and training. All ships implement Morrison Protocol 7, Chin ordered, remembering a contingency plan her tactical officer had developed during their journey to Kepler. Morrison Protocol 7 was based on a simple but effective principle. If the enemy could predict human behavior, humans would have to become unpredictable even to themselves. Each ship captain drew random tactical cards from a deck Morrison had prepared, forcing them to use weapons combinations and maneuvers that no logical planning could anticipate. The results were chaotic in the extreme. The UES Hurricane executed a barrel roll while firing mining charges from its cargo hold. The UES Avalanche used its tractor beam to grab debris and hurl it at enemy ships like a massive slingshot. The UES Thunder performed a high-speed ram against a harvester vessel, trusting its heavy armor to survive the impact. But even as human ingenuity found new ways to surprise the enemy, the harvesters continued to adapt. Their learning algorithms processed each new tactic within minutes, developing countermeasures with terrifying efficiency. What worked once rarely worked twice, forcing the human crews to constantly invent new approaches to combat. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring the battle from her laboratory, made a disturbing discovery as she analyzed the energy signatures from the harvester ships. Commander, she transmitted to the bridge, the larger harvester vessels aren't just ships, they're mobile factories. They're using the materials from damaged council and human vessels to construct new units in real time. The tactical situation was becoming desperate. For every harvester ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place, built from the wreckage of their own losses. The enemy was literally growing stronger as the battle progressed, turning the debris of war into new weapons against the defenders. We need a new approach, Chin said, studying the tactical displays with growing concern. Something they can't predict or adapt to. Morrison looked up from his calculations with an expression of desperate inspiration. Commander, what if we stop trying to fight them and start trying to confuse them instead? Explain, Chin ordered. Earth weather, Morrison replied. Back home, we have chaos systems that are completely unpredictable. Hurricanes, tornadoes, lightning storms. Weather patterns that no computer can accurately forecast because they're based on quantum-level uncertainties. What if we could create artificial weather in space? Chief Engineer Rivera immediately understood the concept. Electromagnetic storms, he said excitedly. We use our ship's power systems to generate massive EM fields that interfere with their sensors and coordination systems. Create a space weather pattern that changes constantly and randomly. Admiral Vexhan's hologram flickered with confusion. You want to create a storm in space? That's impossible with conventional technology. Good thing we don't use conventional technology, Rivera grinned. Human ships are built to survive anything, including the worst electromagnetic storms Earth's magnetosphere can throw at us. We can generate fields that would fry council electronics and still keep fighting. Dr. Vasquez ran rapid calculations on her portable computer. It could work, she reported. If we create enough electromagnetic chaos, their adaptive systems won't be able to establish stable sensor locks or communication patterns. It would be like fighting in a permanent lightning storm. Chun made the decision that would define the next phase of the battle. All ships implement Storm Protocol, generate maximum electromagnetic interference, and prepare for close-quarters combat. The human fleet began to emit powerful electromagnetic pulses that created cascading interference patterns throughout the local space. The harvesters, dependent on their sophisticated sensor networks and communication systems, found themselves fighting blind in an environment that changed too rapidly for their adaptive systems to compensate. But as the human ships prepared for the most dangerous phase of the battle, Dr. Vasquez made another discovery that would change everything. Deep within the harvester fragment, she had found something that shouldn't exist, a quantum signature that matched no known technology, organic or mechanical. Commander, she transmitted urgently, I think I know what's controlling the harvesters, and it's not what we thought. The battle for Kepler Station was about to take a turn that no one could have predicted, as humanity prepared to face not just adaptive machines, but something far older and more dangerous than anyone had imagined.